Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Pat Hickey here. And for those who don't really know what it is I actually do here at the Courier and Press, this is my first full year as the University of Southern Indiana Athletics beat reporter, and you are listening to the first podcast segment dedicated entirely to the Screaming Eagles and Screagle Nation. More on that in just a minute, but I am joined by Jevin Redman, who has broadcasted play-by-play for a number of local sports the past few years, but most importantly to the podcast, he's seen a lot of USI basketball, and that's what this weekly podcast is going to be all about the next several weeks. So Jevin, thanks for being here. Just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Well, thanks, Pat. Looking forward to it, and should be a lot of fun doing this throughout the year. But as you mentioned, I'm Jevin Redman, mainly at USI. I've been the play-by-play voice for the student station for both basketball teams and baseball. Been very blessed over the past several years, gotten to call a lot of big games and have gone to a lot of cool places. But this USI basketball team coming in this year, I'm looking forward to seeing them get started here in a couple weeks. Really trying to kind of rebuild from what in USI terms would be a down year the past two seasons. So I think this is an exciting team. Look forward to talking about it this upcoming season.
So Jevin, and to our listeners at home or on the road, what we're doing here today is kind of just the first of 5 week positional breakdowns of the USI men's basketball team. There will be a write-up online each Wednesday and in print on Thursdays for the next 5 weeks leading into the Purdue exhibition on November the 1st. This week we're just going to start with the one guard spot. Last year it was Bobo Drummond running the point as the primary ball handler. This year junior transfer Marcellus Washington is expected to be the guy. Here's head coach Rodney Watson with more on the Louisville native who spent his first 2 years at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio, which is the same school that gave USI Gavin Schumann, who led the Eagles in scoring 2 years ago.
It had a little bit of a pelvis issue that kind of set him back a little bit, which kept him off the court. But he's really fast. He's as good as we thought he was, and he's got to pick up the defensive side of it. He's got to get a little more physical defensively, but he can really push the ball. He's got a very good vision. He plays with his head up, and he's really athletic. And his athleticism will kind of surprise you when you first see it.
So Jevin, outside of that, we don't know a ton about Marcellus yet. Very healthy numbers at Sinclair. Watson seems to be a fan of him offensively with ability to push the ball because that's something he felt they didn't do as much or as well last year. But let's continue on the offensive side of the ball and switch gears back to Bobo. He's obviously a very good shooter, maybe the best on a team that has a lot of good ones with Alex Stein and, of course, Dribble. Dribble Taylor can really score. But Jevin, you've got to like the idea of Bobo or anyone on the floor having more opportunities to get up on the open floor and score, don't you think?
Well, yeah, Bobo Drummond can certainly shoot the three ball. That's mainly his go-to. I just remember that game early in the year against Leeds McRae where he's 7-7 from downtown. So he's a guy that can light it up pretty quickly. The only downside to Bobo Drummond last year that I saw, at times kind of an in-between of whether he wanted to be a passer or a shooter. At times he felt like he had to shoot the ball, but then again, he really felt the point guard spot, he should be a distributor. So that's where I think with Marcellus coming in, a guy that can really push the tempo and distribute the basketball, that'll give Bobo Drummond more options, and that kind of is a trickle-down effect to Alex Stein and Dribble Taylor. The one quote about Marcellus Washington from Coach Watson that I found interesting is he mentions he can score the basketball, and that was a little bit of a question mark with Marcellus coming in, how much he could score. So it sounds like he's going to be able to add more of the scoring column as well and not just be a passing point guard. One concerning thing would be on the defensive end. When he was first picked up by USI, they thought he was going to be a very good defender, and now it sounds like he has some work to do on the defensive end. That's a place where USI struggled last year, wasn't the defensive end defending out on the perimeter and the three-point ball. They were one of the worst teams in the GLVC, I believe, in that. So, Yeah, I think it's a good mix. Marcellus is going to add some depth to the team, but with Bobo Drummond, I think he's going to benefit a lot from Marcellus, kind of dropping to more of a number 2 role and being able to shoot the basketball more.
Yeah, like Jevin said, on the flip side of this, defensively, USI did really, really struggle at defending the 3 last year. They were 15th out of 16 teams in the GLVC during league play at allowing 41% from deep. So that's not very good, and they're hoping to kind of rectify that. I spoke with Bobo, and he said, just a summary, he's put in a lot of work on picking up the ball sooner and kind of disrupting the other team's flow. Here's Bobo on a part of what he wants to be known at for when he leaves USI.
Like I said to you this summer, my main deal is defense, and I think I got a lot better at it, and that's something that I want to be kind of known for. My last year is like, the coaches can rely on me to be a defensive guy, defensive stopper. And without having to use so much energy, pushing the ball up the head and, being the lead guy with the ball probably 80% of the time, that gives me a chance to kind of, work more on defense. Where Marcellus would be the guy that's expending more energy on the offensive end, and I could kind of, get easier shots that don't make me as tired, and that'll help me be able to jam the ball better. That's something that I'm focused on right now, just being the best defender I can be.
So defense, obviously, a big part of Bobo's summer. You hear him say he exerted a lot of energy offensively last year and was just simply worn down on defense. So having Marcellus push the ball will save him some energy to use on the other end defensively. Jevin, I'll kick this back to you. What did you think of Bobo last year on the defensive end?
Well, Bobo is a very high-character guy, and I hear him say that in the summer he feels like he got a lot better at the defensive end, and that's one of his goals. I assume and I believe he's going to be better at the defensive end this year. Normally what he says he comes through with. Now, I think that's a whole key is having somebody else to push the ball. Bobo got worn down late in ball games last year. Having to play 36, 37 minutes. I think with the added depth now, the point guard, you won't see him play as many minutes, a little bit more of a breather, and not having to push the basketball. USI had 5 or 6 games where they lost down the stretch, where I think they got fatigued a little bit because of how many minutes those point guards had to play. I've always thought Drummond was a little bit underrated on the defensive side of things. One reason would be 2 years ago you had Gavin Schumann, who was known as a pretty good defender. Jarrell Taylor can certainly turn up on the defensive end, so those were your lockdown defenders. Bobo Drummond wasn't really considered a lockdown defender, but I think he did a good job on the guys he was assigned with. The one battle he has to kind of overcome is his size. Normally he's smaller than the other point guard, but Bobo is a competitor, and normally he's able to overcome that obstacle and do a good job defending. But the main thing is, Pat, with having Marcellus on being able to push the basketball, Bobo can save some of the energy for the defensive end.
Great points. Kind of lastly, last point we wanted to bring up, USI has pretty much always been pretty guard heavy under Rodney Watson, at least according to one of his assistants, Kevin Gant. They've always had pretty good depth, and it seems like this year it'll be more of the same. Even at the one guard spot, we could throw Alex Stein in this conversation. He's a little bit bigger for a guard at 6'3" compared to Marcellus and Bobo, who are about 5'10" and 6 foot. But Kevin Gant really feels the depth that they have at this position is going to be pretty strong. Here's Kevin Gant.
We had a whole lot of guards, and coaches, the way we want to play really intense on defense. We want to play really fast on offense. So with that, we got to have a lot of guards that we can throw in that can keep that tempo going. And I think that's going to be one thing we'll have a really good advantage over a lot of teams, is that we really don't have drop-offs between whoever starts and whoever comes off the bench. I think that is really going to help us in that part of the game. And every time you bring somebody else in fresh, a lot of teams, they don't go more than 7 deep. So they're always seeing fresh legs, and they got to worry about, the second wave. And I think that's really going to work to our advantage.
So Jevin, just final thoughts on the point guard spot. A definite strength, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and it's going to have to be with the players they have on the roster. I mean, the guards are going to have to be the position that carries this team this upcoming season. In all honesty, when you look at the GOVC, the majority of the teams have a post game, but I think at the guard level, USI hands down has the best from top to bottom guards. I don't think there's any question on that, especially watching the guards from other teams last year. Maybe not the best guard, but from top to bottom, I think they're in good shape based on the GOVC. But I'm looking forward to watching this team push the basketball with players that are actually built to push the basketball. My freshman year was when they had Lawrence Thomas and Aaron Nelson. They won over 20 games, made the NCAA tournament, and they weren't necessarily a fast-paced team. They could push the ball, but that wasn't their main goal. They were able to go down low to Nelson and score at the rim. Felt like the past 2 years they were kind of in limbo of what they wanted to do. They had some post players, but not your true post players. George Edwards and TJ Tisdale, they're big, and they could score at the rim, but they didn't have the back-to-the-basket moves to where they could score. So this year, it's going to be the same story. Your roster is going to be built around your guards, but with the addition of Marcellus Washington and having that depth, I think you'll be able to push the basketball more without getting fatigued and be able to rely on a Bobo Drummond and an Alex Stein late in games to come through, and hopefully that takes away from those, final minute, 2-minute losses that they had last year. USI could have easily won 25 ball games last year. Sure. They had 5 or 6 games that came down to the wire, and they just couldn't get over that hump and finish basketball games. One last point, I'll turn it back over to you, Pat, but we haven't really talked about Alex Stein a lot. We'll talk about him in the future weeks, but he got forced in the role of having to bring the ball up the floor some last year against some pressure. And as a freshman, he did a good job against it, but you could tell he wasn't real comfortable with it. That's not his main frame as a player. So having this Marcellus Washington kid back on the team, another trickle-down effect with Jarrell Taylor and Alex Stein. They don't have to handle the basketball in the backcourt against pressure, and I'm really looking forward to this team. I think they'll be much improved from last year.
Okay, Jevin, thank you very much. All right, that'll do it for us for Pat Hickey and Jevin Redman. We'll do this again next Wednesday with the shooting guard spot. A lot of options there as well. Hope you enjoyed listening, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.